The sun hadn't fully risen yet when Tom was already standing on the porch of his old wooden house. He held a mug of hot, strong coffee in his hands, and steam rose from the drink, disappearing into the cold morning air. His eyes were fixed on the stream below, and something in his heart felt uneasy, like before a storm. Down by the pen, two workers were trying to handle a black bull that was fiercely resisting, kicking the ground with his hind legs and snorting as if he fully understood what was waiting for him. Pushing hard against the fence and trying to break the rope, the bull forced the men, who were used to tough work, to give it everything they had just to keep him in place. "No smoking today," said one of the workers, leaning on the railing next to Tom. The unlit cigar in his mouth gave his words extra weight. "Just like with that old bull we sent to the slaughterhouse a couple months back." Tom only nodded, not taking his tense gaze off the animal. In the soft morning light, the bull looked older, his black coat shining with dew, and in his dark eyes there was something more than simple animal instinct, some kind of deep, almost human understanding. "He's always been strange," the farmer muttered, more to himself than to the worker, "since he showed up here about 7 years ago." The worker looked at the bull with curiosity, saying thoughtfully, "Strange or just different?" Tom sighed as if replaying unpleasant memories in his mind. He arrived with 5 other bulls, all young, strong, but this one never blended in with the rest, always kept to himself. He hardly even paid attention to the cows, didn't walk with the herd, didn't come close to the fence. He never acted like the others, just watched everything around him. In the pen, Black suddenly stopped resisting. He slowly raised his head as if trying to figure out the people's intentions. His stare gave people goosebumps, too focused, too human. "I never trusted the quiet ones," the farmer said, ending the conversation. The worker chuckled. "He's just different. Not like the others, that's true. But I've never seen him act aggressive without a reason." Tom didn't answer. He just took another sip of his coffee, now more bitter from the cold that seeped through the scratched ceramic mug. The next day promised to be hard, unavoidable, and, it seemed, bloody. The sound of a car on the gravel road broke the morning silence. Both men turned to the noise at the same time. An old silver pickup truck was approaching the house covered in road dust, with a visible dent on the side. Recognizing the vehicle, Tom sighed with relief and set his mug on the railing. "Well, look at that. My daughter decided to visit us." The truck stopped with a rough growl near the house. Laura got out, a young woman in her early 20s, her tanned skin and dark hair tied in a tight bun, spoke of a life lived outdoors. Her sharp eyes showed someone who had seen more hardship than someone her age usually would. She carefully stepped out of the truck, holding a bright, colorful blanket in her arms. The worker nodded approvingly. "You've already seen the little one today?" Tom silently watched as Laura walked around the truck and opened the back door. In her arms, she gently held a sleeping baby. 10-month-old Max, dressed in a bright yellow jumpsuit, with a blue pacifier in his mouth, was curled up tightly in the blanket. Laura slowly walked up the porch. "Dad," she said softly. In the silence that followed, the only sound was the restless bull's hooves hitting the ground. "I thought you were coming at the end of the month." Plans changed. Tom gave a quick glance at his grandson, who was starting to wake up. "He's grown so much." "Yeah, he's growing fast," she replied, hurrying into the house, saying something about milk in the fridge on the way. Just before going inside, Laura looked back at her father. Then her eyes moved to the pen, where the black bull stood still like a rock among the noise and shouting. "He's still here? On his last day?" "I've already arranged everything with the butcher. He's coming today." Laura shook her head, glancing at the bull again. "Did he ever do anything to you?" Tom hesitated before answering, and when he finally spoke, his voice trembled, filled with old pain and unclear fear. "No, but there are some animals that don't need to do anything wrong to be dangerous. Today we're settling things with him once and for all." The baby made a soft whining sound, reaching out his little hands into the air. And down in the pen, Black slowly raised his head and looked straight at the porch, at Tom, at Laura, at the baby, as if he understood everything that was happening, as if he was waiting for what couldn't be stopped. The day dragged on slowly, like a tired animal. The winter sun gradually warmed the wooden walls of the barn, and flies buzzed around the workers' forgotten feed buckets. Inside the main house, a strange calm filled the air. Tom, usually quiet and reserved, spent an unusual amount of time holding his grandson. Max laughed out loud every time his grandpa pretended to be a bull, mooing loudly and raising his hands like horns. Laura sat on the porch quietly watching them. Her eyes were full of tenderness and a hidden worry, as if she knew this peaceful moment wouldn't last long. After several hours of struggle, the workers finally managed to drive Black into the far corner of the pen. There, behind the tall fence, in the sparse shade, on the dry, cracked ground, he stood almost completely still. The rest of the cattle had been gathered for loading onto the waiting truck. Only Black remained apart, just like always, off to the side, separated from the others. When the evening sun painted the sky in faded, muted tones, the whole family gathered in the living room. Laughter filled the house, and even the usually grim Tom allowed himself a sincere, unfamiliar smile as he held his grandson on his lap. Max was playfully trying to grab his grandfather's nose with his curious little fingers while Laura recorded the moment on her old phone. It was a rare moment of simple family joy, but outside the house, the atmosphere was entirely different. Black stood alone in the pen. With his head lowered and his body still like a statue, he seemed like a living sculpture. Only the clouds of steam coming from his nostrils showed he was breathing, steady and strong. His wide eyes were fixed on the house, watching every flicker of light from the windows, every echo of a child's laugh. A cool breeze gently rocked the tall trees surrounding the farm, and there was a deep, almost touchable silence. Even the usually restless crickets seemed unwilling to break this strange calm. Night slowly settled in, and within this deceptive peace, something unsettling hid, something that felt like a warning. As the first ray of morning sunlight crossed the field, fog still lay thick across the ground like a white blanket. Laura was already awake, with her hair loose, falling on her shoulders, and a large basket of laundry in her hands. She was focused on washing clothes in a concrete basin near the house. Max was still sleeping soundly on the couch. She quietly hummed a wordless tune when suddenly the silence was broken by the deep roar of an approaching engine. A cloud of dust rose on the horizon, and Tom, already wearing his hat, quickly stepped out of the house, loudly giving instructions to the men getting ready for work. A worn-out livestock truck stopped near the pen. 3 men climbed down from the cab, dressed in faded work clothes and heavy, dirty boots. They had come to do a job they knew well: load, transport, slaughter. The first group of animals was driven toward the truck to the sounds of loud shouts and the crack of sticks. Black silently watched what was happening. He didn't move. He just watched carefully. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. A swift shadow flashed across the sky, fast and ominous. It was an eagle. Its powerful dark wings circled high above the farm until it finally landed on a dry branch of a tree not far from the main house. The predator's golden eyes calmly scanned the area like a skilled hunter, carefully choosing its target. The bull instantly sensed danger and tensed. A low sound rumbled from his throat, and a thick puff of steam burst from his nostrils. The muscles under his black hide tightened as he took 2 cautious steps forward. His hooves sank deep into the damp earth, still wet from the night fog. There was no fear in Black's eyes, only sharp alertness. Every part of him felt the approaching threat. The eagle sat perfectly still. On the other side of the farm, Tom continued loudly managing the loading process. One by one, animals were being herded into the truck. Laura was finishing up at the basin. She was sure Max was still sleeping inside the house. From above, the eagle was watching the house closely. From the pen, Black was watching the eagle just as closely. Something inevitable was about to happen, and no one but the bull sensed the coming danger. The branch moved slightly under the weight of the bird. The eagle instantly readied itself for the dive, its sharp eyes locking onto movement below. Tilting its head, it tracked every unsteady step of a small figure. It was Max, who had quietly slipped away from his mother's watch. Drawn by the bright morning sunlight through the window and the colorful spots in the yard, he had wandered out of the house on his still unstable legs. His arms hung at his sides, his steps wobbly, but his childlike eyes lit up with joy when he saw something round and brightly colored on a small tree. A shiny green fruit sparkled in the morning light, like a treasure from a fairy tale. The world around continued with its usual rhythm, but from the pen, Black saw what others did not. The bull, calm and silent until now, suddenly sprang into action. His powerful hind legs struck the ground hard. With the very first blow, he broke one of the fence boards. Throwing all his weight against the wall, he made the wooden structure groan under the pressure. The workers glanced at each other briefly, but then went back to their tasks. To them, there was nothing unusual or alarming about the bull's behavior. Tom raised his head and shouted angrily, "Can anyone see what that demon is doing? Hurry up with the loading." The bull struck again, and the pen walls noticeably shook. "Faster!" Tom yelled even louder. "Move it before that beast breaks free. Get him in the truck now or we'll be chasing him all over the farm." But none of the workers moved. They all felt a perfectly understandable fear of the enraged animal. No one wanted to be the first to approach a 1,500-pound bull. Black stepped back to the center of the pen. Taking a deep breath, he gathered all his strength for a final blow and threw the full power of his massive body into it. The boards cracked and snapped like fragile sticks. The fence collapsed. The bull was free. Tom jumped to his feet, shouting in panic, "Someone stop him! Don't let him get away!" But everyone seemed frozen in place, and Black raced across the yard. Right at the entrance to the house, beneath the tree, sat little Max. He looked up with childlike curiosity, babbling softly to himself. For him, the world was a completely safe place, where danger didn't exist. At that very moment, the eagle spread its powerful wings. With one smooth motion, it pushed off the branch, tucked its wings in for a rapid dive, and extended its sharp talons. Its flight was lightning fast, perfectly precise and nearly silent. Reaching the right height, the predator chose its attack angle. A deadly strike aimed at the unprotected head of the child. Then came Black's thunderous roar. A furious cry, like a clap of thunder, tore through the air. Laura, hanging up the freshly washed laundry, turned in horror. Seeing the charging bull, she froze, paralyzed by fear. She wanted to scream, but everything was happening too fast for her to react. Tom, stumbling, reached the porch and grabbed the old rifle leaning by the door. "I knew it!" he cried out in despair. "He's attacking the boy!" And he rushed toward his grandson, ready to shoot. Laura stood frozen for a moment, unable to comprehend what was happening. Then her eyes darted to the tree and she saw her son. "Max!" she screamed in terror. But the boy didn't hear her voice. The eagle was already closing in, and time seemed to slow down. The world held its breath, waiting for disaster, while Max reached out innocently toward the bright object, completely unaware of the deadly danger above him. And then the unbelievable happened. Black seemed to rise off the ground, a huge black shadow with burning eyes and his head lowered for impact. At the very moment the eagle released its talons for the fatal grab, the bull threw his entire body between the predator and the child. The bird was knocked aside like a rag doll. Feathers flew through the air, swirling like festive confetti. Max fell to the ground, frightened but not crying. He simply stared upward, wide-eyed in amazement, and above him, like a living shield, stood Black. Between the boy and the rest of the world, his massive chest heaved from the effort, clouds of hot steam pouring from his flaring nostrils. Tom stood frozen in the middle of the field, holding the rifle in his hands, as if the weight of the entire world had suddenly fallen on his shoulders. The loud pounding of his own heart drowned out every other sound. He stared at the bull, the very same bull he had considered for years to be the embodiment of danger, defiance, and constant threat. Laura ran over, slipping on the wet grass. She grabbed Max in her arms with a desperate cry of relief. She was crying and laughing at the same time, clutching her son to her chest. And the boy, with an unexplainable fascination, kept looking at the massive bull. As if somehow he knew him. As if he had always believed that, when the moment came, this strange bull would protect him. Tom slowly approached them. Carefully laying the rifle on the ground, he stared at Black for a long time, what felt like an eternity. In the animal's eyes, he saw something that shook him to his core. It looked like true loyalty, something he had never noticed before. "I never understood you, did I?" he whispered tiredly. "You were just waiting for the right moment to show who you really are." Black lowered his head slightly, as if in agreement. Then he slowly turned and walked back toward the broken pen, calmly without any rush, as if his life's main mission had finally been completed. That day, Tom canceled the shipment of the last group of cattle. The bull stayed on the farm, freely roaming the green fields like a silent but watchful guardian. Laura often watched him from afar, holding growing Max in her arms. As the boy grew older, he started calling Black his big friend. And when guests or neighbors asked why such a powerful animal was still living on the farm, Tom always gave a simple and honest answer. "Because one day he saved everything I had in this life,